Nonsensical Pittsburgh Steelers talk. Every single week we take that walk through the history, the present, and the future bright. Steel City stories shining ever so light. Yeah, Viking, Donkey, Gingy, Lasker, a legendary crew. Talking Steelers football through and through.
That is right, Jackson Jennings. It is time for some nonsensical Steelers talk on your daily dose of Donkey with Ginger. It's your boy, the Viking Donkey, of course, right here, bringing you all of this fun stuff. And this week, we're going to keep it short. We're going to keep it sweet. It's going to just be a little bit of a pre-draft preview on what I see as the biggest needs for the Pittsburgh Steelers coming into the 2026 draft held in Pittsburgh, of course. Steel City rise up, show up, and, make people know what we're all about here in the city that holds the legacy, the best legacy for a football team. But what do the Steelers need? Is there any other crazy things that have happened recently that have lessened any of the particular needs for the Steelers? Spoiler alert, if you've been listening for the past offseason, no, not really. There hasn't been any signings. There's been no Aaron Rodgers news. Talk is that might happen before the draft. And, of course, that will change one of what I perceive as the Steelers' biggest needs to drop down the board a little bit. Of course, if you haven't been able to figure out by now, I am doing this week solo. We're going to keep it short, sweet. Hopefully, we have Gingy back to talk the draft here at the end of the upcoming week, Friday or Saturday. We'll see how things go. Just got done with a little bit of a trip, so if I sound a little exhausted, I kind of am. Meant to do this before, but really couldn't think of what to talk about. It's that time of year where it's kind of hard to look back at things. I guess could pre-rank old drafts. It's a time where unless you want to go back and recover a lot of things that I covered last off season and just try to make them new and presentable, there's just not a whole heck of a lot going on. So we'll go ahead here and we'll look at one of the few things that hasn't been talked about, and that's the biggest draft needs for the Pittsburgh Steelers where they currently stand. So when we look at this, we want to look at positions that currently don't have a starter with NFL experience is what I'll look at it as being. And that comes down to really what? Two positions where there isn't a current established NFL starter. There's just guys who are, maybe potential move-in position things. And potentially three, depending on how you feel Broderick Jones is healing from his neck. The Steelers say he is looking upward and should be good to go. So we'll go ahead and assume that he is good to go like they're telling us. And that leaves, of course, left guard and quarterback. Now, if I was to rank these two right now, I would say quarterback, yeah, I don't know if that's the bigger need. And the biggest reason I say for this is or quarterback would be the bigger need, is what I mean to say. And the reason is, when you look at left guard, a lot of people talked about Troy Fontanu when we drafted him moving into play guard. Broderick Jones is a big athletic guy. He moves into play guard. We've seen guys who struggle to tackle move into play guard. And right now it looks like they have three capable guys who have shown ability to start in the NFL. Some of them not a whole lot of good tape, but maybe moving into guard would help them. Of course, that's because Dylan Cook really showed to be capable his last, 4-ish games, small sample size. But they don't have a quarterback on the NFL roster who's proven to be top level starter, we'll say. That not fringe guy. Of course, Mason Rudolph fits in that fringe starter role. You want to sell me on Will Howard, feel free to. I'm not going to argue with you. But clearly the bigger hole right now is quarterback. That could easily drop right off the draft board if they bring back Aaron Rodgers. But right now when you're putting it down, quarterback goes above the other non-starter spot right now, which is left guard. Left guard comes in. Interior offensive lineman, I guess, comes in at number 2 on positions of need for the Pittsburgh Steelers as far as I see it. And then it gets a little tricky I think the positions you have to look at after this is they've done a pretty good job of solidifying themselves at safety, bringing in Brisker, adding Jalen Ramsey into that mix. They've done a good job at adding corners in there to add depth there. Wide receiver looks like it has depth now. Tight end clearly has depth. The other line positions we talked about. So where are players that you could improve? It, that's what we're at now is what position needs the most improvement. And that comes down to two two positions really. It depends on again another one that depends on your view, but I think the Steelers need to add a nose tackle who's big enough to be a nose tackle rather than playing someone out of position, Keanu Benton, in the middle down there, and middle linebacker has a struggle as well as I don't. You could argue Peyton Wilson is a guy who should be playing, and I liked what I saw from him enough that I would give him a good chance of a slot. I like Cole Holcomb. I hope he can get healthy and look like he did before he got hurt as a Steeler. I'm not sold on Queen being the answer. And you need when you're playing two of them, one of them has to be upper tier play, and the Steelers haven't got that yet from any of them. And then of course you add offensive tackle in there. So the three spots I'm looking at after interior offensive lineman and a quarterback, to me, I would go offensive tackle because yeah, you can never have enough good offensive linemen. If one of these, if Fontanu or Broderick Jones or Cook doesn't take a step forward, you know, none of them were great players last year. Got some serviceable play out of them. They weren't bad. Not going to say that. But you want better than that. So I'd put offensive tackle here as the third biggest need. Fourth biggest need goes to middle linebacker. Fifth biggest need then, of course, falls to that interior defensive lineman. I think you need to find a guy who's a big guy that can block it up. And maybe it even falls lower depending on if you're a fan of Wyatt Black. And that's why, to me, it's down on this list. But then it's really, are you it none of these I think you could be wrong labeling them any direction because it's are you a fan of Fontanu and Broderick Jones? Are you a bigger fan of Wyatt Black? Are you a person who personally thinks Patrick Queen has really come into his own and looked fantastic? I mean, you can make an argument however you feel each way. I personally feel Queen was the biggest liability out of them all, but I feel they have enough middle linebackers who are starter capable that it's doable where for the offensive tackles, excuse me, for the offensive tackles, it just doesn't feel like those guys have stepped up into the role enough. I know Fontanu's young, you're going to see development. Broderick Jones, you could argue the same thing. Dylan Cook is a guy who's built his way up from undrafted to starting. I get it, but I just don't think tackle's a spot you can afford to miss or not have enough. And even if you draft another guy who's good, you can move someone to the interior to play there. Replace guys who are aging out or contracting out that maybe are a little going to get paid a little bit more than what they're worth to you. So, like I said, that's why I go that direction right there. And then after that, it really becomes a crapshoot of the rest of the positions. So I'd say every other position that's left on the team, it pretty much becomes, hey, just pick best player available if you've addressed all these needs, or these needs aren't in the same tier as the guys who are available, right? Like if you have a first round guy or grade on only one guy who's available, you take that guy. If you have a second round grade on only one guy available, you take that guy in the second round. You don't reach for a position of need at the fourth round grade. But if you have a second round grade on a tackle and a second round grade on a running back, you take the tackle before the running back. That's what this whole thing is for me. I'm personally a believer in you take the best player, not the position of need. However, that's with a caveat. All these people should be graded by round. And like early first round is the only exception to me is there's early first round talent versus first round talent. And we're picking where you just get a first round talent. So if you have a first round grade on a position of need, you take that player, right? You don't reach for a second round talent at a position of need. We've seen what happens when you do that. don't reach around early for a talent. Take the best talent available at the position of need. If there isn't a talent available at that position of need, if there's a first round talent that you need, but if that talent isn't there, do not do not reach because your most needed position is interior offensive line. Don't take a second round talent in the first round, is essentially what I am trying to get at with this whole premise. And for me, after the five we broke down, the only spot that I would say is a position of need where maybe you take your lower ranked guy, as long as that guy's still ranked, like a fourth round talent, but you have him as like the 48th player on the board for you, where you still have your 42nd guy available, but they're both fourth round grades. I would take a wide receiver before any of the remaining positions just simply because while I think the Steelers have a nice 1-2 combo, and I think the potential for a number three is in there somewhere with the remaining guys, maybe. I still would love to see what Roman Wilson can do on a normal team. Also, I don't think we can overlook the fact that maybe Pat Freiermuth moves into that number three wide receiver role with Washington taking more time as tight end. I don't know if you can ever not draft a wide receiver, especially late rounds. You should always be bringing in a late round guy who has some type of skill set you need. And the Steelers have enough late round picks that I'd say wide receiver is the only other position that I will put out there as a position of need for the Steelers. And it's mostly just to add depth to that because while we did bring in, Pittman to fill out with Metcalf, I think you still need just that one more depth piece that completes the puzzle there. And then I think you're really set and you're just looking to add best player available at that point. So you have your scouting board, you have everything. If those spots aren't done, it's just best player available, best player available, best player available. Or better yet, because I think we have like 10 picks or so, just go ahead after we filled all those, just fill up, get that roster good, make the people in Pittsburgh happy, put some names out there that are going to, excite the crowd, so to speak. So, again, right there, that's plain, that's simple, that's easy, that's nice and quick. That is what I foresee as a Steelers draft needs, how I foresee draft working with needs the way I would personally do it. Don't know how the Steelers do it. No insight to that at all. But I hope they work a system somewhat like that because it seems to be the logical one when you look at it from an outside football perspective, right? So that's it. That's all I got. I guess it's time for a shout out. And since the Masters just wrapped up, and while he's definitely not one of my favorite golfers, did something pretty impressive. Rory McIlroy going back to back on the Masters titles needs to get a shout out because that's a pretty impressive feat right there in and of itself. So now I'll let you know. I am the Viking Donkey. It's Viking_Donkey, Twitch or Twitter. Your Daily Dose Donkey Ginger is the awesome channel where you're tuning in to get this fun stuff. And be sure you tune in next week because we should have Gingy. We should have a nice little draft talk breakdown of what we hope to see from the Pittsburgh Steelers. But until then, Jackson Janet's Donk Nation, wave them if you got them. Here we go.